Welcome back to the channel Coins Collector, my friends, to another fascinating deep dive into the incredible world of rare coins, numismatic treasures, and the stories that turn a small piece of metal into a life-changing fortune. Today we're talking about something that has been making collectors and treasure hunters all over the world take a second look at their pocket change. Imagine this for a moment. You're rummaging through an old coin jar. Maybe it's something your grandparents kept on a shelf. Maybe it's just a bunch of change you've been tossing into a container for years without really thinking about it. You pick out a simple-looking United States quarter from 1968, maybe it's got a little wear on it, maybe the shine has dulled over the decades. You think, well, it's 25 cents, nothing special, right? But then you learn that this particular quarter could be worth as much as $648,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A single $quarter, worth nearly $250,000, not because it's made of solid gold, not because it was owned by a famous celebrity, but because of the tiny imperfections, the mistakes, the quirks in its creation that make it a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. Now before we jump into exactly why this 1968 Liberty $quarter can be worth such an astronomical amount of money, we need to set the stage. The year was 1968. The United States was going through a whirlwind of history. The Vietnam War was raging overseas, protests were filling the streets back home, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were tragically assassinated, and in the midst of this turbulence, the United States Mint was doing what it had always done, producing coins for everyday use. The $quarter at that time featured the familiar portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan, with the word Liberty above his head, the year 1968 below his bust, and the phrase "In God We Trust" to the side. On the reverse, you had the majestic bald eagle with outspread wings, perched on a bundle of arrows, framed by olive branches, symbols of peace and readiness for defense. It looked like any other Washington quarter, at least on the surface, but here's where the story gets interesting. You see, coin collecting is not just about age. Plenty of coins from 1968 exist today, and most are worth their face value or perhaps a little more if they're in pristine condition. What turns an ordinary 1968 quarter into a $648,000 treasure is a combination of rarity, error, and mint mark anomalies. And that's where the magic of numismatics really shines. Every coin that leaves the mint is supposed to be consistent, precise, and standardized. But sometimes, just sometimes, things go wrong in the production process. Dies can be misaligned, mint marks can be misplaced or missing entirely, planchets, the blank discs that become coins, can be the wrong size or made of the wrong metal, or design details can be doubled during the striking process. When these errors occur in extremely small quantities, and especially when they're discovered decades later, the coins can become worth staggering amounts to collectors who crave the rarest of the rare. In 1968, one of the big changes in coin production was the use of the mint mark to indicate where a coin was struck. Prior to that, from 1965 to 1967, mint marks had actually been omitted from U.S. coins in an effort to discourage hoarding during a period of silver coinage changes. But in 1968, mint marks returned. If you look closely on a 1968 quarter, you'll find a small letter near the lower right of Washington's hair tie. A D means it was minted in Denver, an S means San Francisco, and no mint mark at all typically means Philadelphia. Here's where it gets really intriguing. Some of the most valuable 1968 quarters involve strange mint mark situations. Imagine a quarter that should have a D, but doesn't. Or one that has the mint mark punched in the wrong place. Or, in an incredibly rare situation, a mint mark that has been accidentally struck over another letter, creating what's known as an overpunched mint mark. Each of these little quirks instantly grabs the attention of serious collectors, but the errors in the most famous $648,000 example go even further. We're talking about coins struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank piece of metal wasn't even meant to be a quarter. Picture a 1968 quarter struck on a planchet intended for a dime, resulting in a coin that's smaller and lighter than it should be but still bearing all the quarter designs crammed into that space. Or one struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin entirely. Errors like these are incredibly scarce, and when they happen in a year like 1968, with low error survival rates, they become incredibly desirable. One of the most remarkable stories involves proof coins from the San Francisco Mint. Proof coins are specially made for collectors, struck with polished dies and planchets to create a mirror-like finish and sharp details. In 1968, proof quarters from San Francisco were supposed to have an S mint mark. Yet a tiny number escaped without any mint mark at all, a shocking oversight for proof coinage. These missing mint mark proofs are now considered some of the rarest modern quarters ever made. And because proof coins are already produced in much smaller quantities than regular circulation strikes, the odds of finding such an error are almost microscopic. Yet when they do appear, they fetch astronomical prices at auction because proof collectors are incredibly passionate about completing perfect sets. Now let's talk about doubling. One of the most visually striking errors is called a double die, where the design appears double due to a misalignment during the creation of the die itself. On a 1968 quarter, this might show up in the letters of Liberty or In God We Trust, or even in the date itself, with a ghostly second image slightly offset from the first. These errors are often spotted by sharp-eyed collectors using magnification, and while minor doubling might only add modest value, dramatic and bold doubling can push a coin's worth into the thousands, especially if combined with other anomalies. The coin that's been valued at $648,000 isn't just any old error coin, it's the perfect storm of conditions. It's believed to have a combination of a wrong planchet, an extremely rare mint mark situation, and exceptional condition, possibly even an uncirculated or proof-like strike. Condition is critical in numismatics. A coin in worn, circulated condition might have the same error as a pristine example, but the pristine one could be worth many times more because collectors prize sharp details and original luster. The grading process, done by professional services like PCGS or NGC, assigns a numerical score from 1 to 70, with 70 being perfection. A high-grade rare error from 1968 is like winning the numismatic lottery. The other layer to this story is demand. You can have a rare coin, but if nobody wants it, it won't sell for much. In the case of the 1968 quarter, Washington quarters are a highly collected series, with enthusiasts seeking out every date and mint mark, as well as major varieties and errors. Add to that the surge of interest in error coins in recent decades, and you have a recipe for sky-high prices when something truly extraordinary comes to market. Auction houses love coins like this because they generate buzz, headlines, and fierce bidding wars between collectors who may have been chasing such a coin for decades. You might be wondering, how many of these $648,000 1968 quarters are out there? The answer is, probably just one or two known examples in that specific combination of errors and grade. That's what makes it so valuable. If dozens or hundreds were known, the price would drop sharply. Scarcity drives value. And that's why, even though millions of 1968 quarters were minted, the vast majority are worth just 25 cents, maybe a few dollars if they're uncirculated. But the ultra-rare ones with the perfect storm of mistakes are in another league entirely. It's also worth noting that there are other valuable 1968 quarters that don't reach the $648,000 mark but are still worth hunting for. Certain double dies, missing mint marks, off-center strikes, or clipped planchets can bring hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on severity and condition. This means that searching through your change or inherited coin collections can actually pay off, especially if you take the time to learn what to look for. When a coin like this comes up for auction, it often comes with a fascinating paper trail. Expert graders examine it under high magnification, confirming the nature of the errors. Provenance, the history of where the coin has been, can also add to the allure. Sometimes a rare error is discovered right away and kept safe for decades. Other times, it hides in plain sight for years until a curious person notices something strange about it. Imagine the thrill of being that person, realizing you're holding an object that could change your financial future in an instant. Today, we're about to dive into one of the most fascinating and jaw-dropping stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that blends history, luck, and hidden treasure you might not even know you're holding in your pocket or tucked away in an old jar at home. Imagine picking up what looks like an ordinary quarter from 1995, just a simple 25-cent piece, and finding out that it could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes, you heard that right. There is a very special version of the 1995 D Liberty Quarter Dollar, a coin from the United States Mint, that is valued at up to $248,000 because of rare errors, unusual mint mark placements, and production anomalies that make it extremely desirable to collectors. And today, we're going to unpack everything you need to know about it. We'll talk about why this coin is so valuable, the errors that make it stand out, the history behind it, and how you could possibly identify one yourself. So get comfortable, because by the end of this story you may be checking every 1995 quarter you come across with a magnifying glass. The 1995 D Liberty Quarter comes from the Washington Quarter series, which had been running since 1932. By 1995, the design was familiar to everyone: George Washington's profile on the obverse side, the word Liberty above his head, the motto "In God We Trust" to his left, the year 1995 below, and the mint mark just to the right of the ribbon in his hair. On the reverse, the American bald eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath. This design had been part of American coinage for decades and was so familiar that people often didn't give it a second glance. But the D in 1995 D tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. And for reasons we're about to explore, some coins from that year and that mint turned out very different from the rest. First, let's talk about what makes any coin valuable in the collector's market. There are a few main factors: rarity, condition, demand, and uniqueness. A coin that's rare but in terrible condition might be interesting but not worth much. A coin that's common but in perfect condition may still fetch a premium. But when you have a coin that's rare, in excellent condition, and has something that makes it unlike almost any other, that's when you start seeing astronomical values. And this 1995 D Liberty Quarter, in its rare error forms, checks all those boxes. The Denver Mint produced millions of quarters in 1995, so most of them are only worth face value today. But a small handful were minted with extraordinary mistakes. Some of these errors are the result of dies being damaged, misaligned, or improperly prepared. Others involve mint marks, the small letter D that indicates the Denver Mint, being doubled, misplaced, or struck in a way that makes them unusual. And in the coin collecting world, a mint mark error can turn an ordinary coin into a treasure point. One of the most famous possibilities with the 1995 D Liberty Quarter is a double die obverse. A double die happens when the design on the die itself is impressed twice at slightly different angles, creating a noticeable doubling of letters, numbers, or features. On this coin, such doubling can sometimes be seen in the word Liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or the date 1995. To the naked eye, it might just look like a bit of a blur or shadow, but under magnification, you can clearly see the doubled lines. This isn't the same as a coin that was struck twice. This doubling happens during the creation of the die itself, meaning every coin struck with that die will show the same doubling. And collectors go crazy for it. Another error to watch for is a repunched mint mark. In 1995, mint marks were still hand-punched into the die. That means a worker had to take a small punch with the letter D and strike it into the die. Sometimes, the first punch didn't go deep enough or was slightly off, so the worker would punch it again. If the second punch didn't line up perfectly with the first, you get what's called a repunched mint mark. On the 1995 D, some examples show a clear shadow of a second D slightly offset from the first. This kind of detail requires close inspection but can be worth a fortune. Misaligned die strikes are another possibility. This happens when the obverse and reverse dies don't line up perfectly, causing the design to be off-center. While minor misalignments are common and not worth much, severe ones can mean the coin's rim is uneven or part of the design is missing entirely. A dramatically misaligned strike on a 1995 D Liberty Quarter can push its value way up because of its rarity and eye-catching appearance. Then there are off-metal strikes, coins struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. For example, if a quarter die strikes a blank intended for a dime or a foreign coin, the result will be an oddly sized or oddly colored quarter with incorrect weight. Such errors are extremely rare, but when they happen, collectors will pay huge premiums. A 1995 D quarter struck on a wrong planchet could easily be one of the most valuable modern quarters. Another key error involves die cracks and cuds. Over time, dies develop cracks from repeated use. If the crack is small, it may just appear as a thin raised line on the coin. But if part of the die breaks away entirely, you get what's called a cud, a raised blob of metal where design elements are missing. These errors on a 1995 D quarter can make it unique among its peers. The reason these errors are so sought after is partly because of the shrinking window for certain minting methods. In 1995, the mint was transitioning toward more modern, machine-based processes that reduced the chances for human error. That means coins with dramatic hand-related mistakes like repunched mint marks are much rarer for this era compared to earlier decades. Add to that the fact that the Washington quarter design was nearing the end of its run before the state quarters program began in 1999, and you have a recipe for collectible interest. But here's the part that really makes people's jaws drop: when a pristine, high-grade example of a rare error coin like this shows up at auction, the price can skyrocket. We're not talking hundreds or even thousands, we're talking into the hundreds of thousands. In the right condition, with the right error, a 1995 D Liberty quarter has been valued at as much as $248,000. That's nearly $250,000 for something that says 25 cents on the front. Condition plays a huge role in this. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin with no visible flaws even under magnification. Many rare error coins in circulation show wear and tear, which reduces their value. But when a rare error coin is found in mint state, meaning it looks just as crisp and clean as the day it left the mint, that's when collectors will go to war at auction. A mint state 1995 D Liberty quarter with a dramatic error and a high grade from a grading service like PCGS or NGC can command astronomical prices. Some people stumble onto these coins by pure chance. They might find one in change, or in an inherited coin collection, or in a jar that's been sitting in the closet for years. Others deliberately hunt for them, searching through rolls of quarters from banks or coin dealers. The thrill of the hunt is part of what drives the coin collecting hobby, the idea that a rare treasure could be hiding in plain sight. It's worth noting that not every unusual-looking quarter from 1995 is valuable. Many coins get damaged after they leave the mint, and post-mint damage doesn't add value. Scratches, gouges, discoloration, or bent edges from circulation are just signs of wear. Genuine mint errors, on the other hand, happen during the striking process and are part of the coin's original state. That's why authentication is so important. Professional coin grading companies can examine a coin, determine whether its unusual features are true mint errors, and assign it a grade that reflects its condition. The story of the 1995 D Liberty quarter is also a reminder of how history and human hands shape our currency. Even in an age of precision machinery, mistakes can and do happen. And sometimes those mistakes slip past quality control and end up in circulation. For collectors, these are the crown jewels, tangible links to the quirks of the minting process. Let's think about what this means in practical terms. If you were to come across a 1995 D quarter with, say, a repunched mint mark and it was in near-perfect condition, you could be holding something worth more than most people's annual salary. If it also had doubling on the obverse and was struck slightly off-center, its rarity and value would climb even higher. Add in the fact that high-grade examples are incredibly scarce, and you can see why the top prices reach into six figures.